November 23rd, 1996, the shores of the Indian Ocean. Vacationers in the Comoros Islands were enjoying an ordinary weekend morning. People on the beach were watching the ocean, immortalizing the moment with their cameras. But just minutes later, these cameras would capture one of the most terrifying events in civil aviation history, second by second. Suddenly, a massive Boeing 767 appeared in the sky. It was gliding at a very low altitude, and the most horrifying part was that not the slightest sound was coming from its giant engines. What would happen seconds later would go down in history as one of the aviation world's most agonizing disasters. In this video, we examine the chilling struggle for survival of Ethiopian Airlines Flight 961. Hijackers, depleted fuel, and an impossible battle of life and death. If you are ready, let's begin. The early 90s. Ethiopia was in deep political turmoil. Overthrown governments and political instability pushed masses of people wanting to flee the country to seek alternative methods. During this period, there was a massive surge in hijackings. Despite all this chaos, Ethiopian Airlines, with its FAA-approved safety standards, was the safest airline company in Africa. On the morning of November 23rd, Flight 961, taking off from Addis Ababa, had a critical route connecting Africa from one end to the other. However, the plane had taken off with only enough fuel for the first leg of the route, Nairobi. That morning, there were 163 passengers from 36 different countries and 12 crew members in the cabin. The aircraft was under the command of 42-year-old experienced Captain Lou Abate. Besides his 11,500 hours of flight experience, there was a detail that made him special. He had been in the middle of a hijacking exactly twice before, and in both instances, he saved his passengers without a single scratch. Sitting in the right seat was his most trusted colleague, First Officer Jonas. Just 20 minutes after takeoff, while climbing to cruising altitude, screams suddenly broke out in the cabin. 3 young men armed with a fire extinguisher, an emergency crash axe, and a fake bomb device attacked the cockpit. They broke down the unarmored door, rushed in, and brutally beat First Officer Jonas before throwing him out of the cockpit. Now, only Lolabat and the lead hijacker, standing right behind him, remained on the flight deck. The hijackers' demand was clear. The route was to be immediately diverted to Australia. They were demanding political asylum. But there was a deadly and unalterable physical reality. Australia was 11,000 kilometers away, and the plane's tanks held only enough fuel for 1,500 kilometers. Captain Lowell repeatedly explained that it was impossible to cross the ocean with this fuel, and that ultimately everyone would die. However, the blinded hijackers refused to listen to any logical warnings. In a brief moment of opportunity, Captain Lowell covertly radioed an emergency distress signal to the Nairobi tower. He secretly reported that the plane was hijacked and relayed their critical fuel level. He had to stall for time without provoking the hijackers. Even though he realized the bomb they held was fake, he knew the panic could trigger a disaster at any second. He turned the nose of the plane not toward the depths of the ocean, but on a route parallel to the African coastline. His ultimate plan was to reach the Comoros Islands in the Indian Ocean and make a forced landing on a runway there. But time was running out like sand in an hourglass. When the plane passed Zanzibar, there was nothing below them but the vast Indian Ocean. At 11:41, the inevitable happened. The right engine completely flamed out due to fuel starvation. A deadly drone-free silence enveloped the cabin. In a commercial jet, the failure of the engines means not only the loss of thrust, but also the shutdown of the electrical and hydraulic systems that give the plane life. Although minimal control was maintained thanks to the emergency propeller, ram air turbine, VRAT, deploying from beneath the fuselage, the massive Boeing 767 was now no different from a giant descending glider. When the Comoros Islands appeared on the horizon, Captain Lul made his final move to direct the plane to the runway. But realizing the situation, the lead hijacker went berserk and attacked the control yoke. A deadly hand-to-hand fight was taking place in the cockpit alongside the battle against the depleted fuel. As the hijacker aggressively pitched the plane's nose, the possibility of landing on the runway completely vanished. In those exact seconds, First Officer Jonas, heavily injured and held hostage in the back, took advantage of the hijacker's distraction in a final effort and forced his way back into the cockpit. Captain Lul was no longer alone, but facing them was an unpowered, rapidly plummeting plane and the ocean surface as their only resort. The captain made one last announcement over the microphone.
Never inflate emergency vests while inside a cabin.
12:20 p.m. Under the horrified gazes of vacationers on the beach, the plane slammed into the ocean surface. As the left wing caught the water, the aerodynamic balance was instantly shattered. The multi-ton jet cartwheeled and broke apart, the fuselage split in two, and within seconds, tons of salt water began pouring inside. The footage captured that day became one of the most shocking documentations of tragedy in aviation history. Among those who lost their lives were the famous war photographer Mohammed Amin and a CIA agent. Amin had stood at the cockpit door until the very last second, trying to negotiate with the hijackers. Only 50 of the 175 people on board survived. 125 people lost their lives, including all three hijackers. The most tragic aspect was that the majority of the deaths resulted from a mistake made in panic. Dozens of traumatized passengers had inflated their life jackets before exiting the plane. When the aircraft flooded, the inflated jackets pinned people against the ceiling, preventing them from reaching the exit doors. This painful tragedy changed global aviation rules forever. The warning we hear before flights today, "Do not inflate your life jacket until you leave the aircraft," is a legacy of Flight 961 written in blood. Captain Lul and co-pilot Jonas managed to survive that hell. The Flight Safety Foundation honored them for their unwavering resilience while attempting to ditch a massive, powerless jet into the water. Ethiopian Airlines Flight 961 was etched into history as an unforgettable tale of survival and tragedy in civil aviation literature. All information in this documentary is based on official accident reports and survivor statements. If you want to see more of these in-depth aviation analyses, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. See you in the next disaster file. Stay safe.